Victor, how were you? How did the passage and the sermon prep process spiritually encourage and strengthen you?
And I think there's definitely that charge to make much of Christ and endure through all things. So just the reminder of what the call entails was encouraging, though maybe sobering, right?
Trev?
The story of your grandpa there at the end, and related to Christ's call in Luke to, if you look back, you're not worthy of me, and just hearing that, seeing it in the text, seeing how it's gripped your life was encouraging to me. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it was a good reminder for me to think about death, honestly, and how you want to go out in a real way, and what it means to, even in death, remember Jesus and keep preaching no matter what. So.
I was encouraged by this, the focus on Christ and then the implications for suffering. Just, the gospel is transformative and it's not easy. And it is a sobering message, and the tone that you brought was sobering, but yet important and true of the gospel. So.
I was helped by your emphasis on the very first few lines there. Remember Jesus Christ, risen from the dead. And that's like a hard thing to believe in sometimes, right? So it's incredible, it's unbelievable. But the continued call for us to be remembering that, remembering Jesus risen, is good for me. I need that.
I just at the beginning, I think you stirred this thought in me of how many people have preached and died and just totally been forgotten about. I mean, I love the old dead guys and everything, and love my library, love to collect those books, but at the same time, for every one of those that's been remembered, how many 15 or 20 or 100 have been just absolutely forgotten and never remembered?
Yeah.
And what honor did that bring to Christ? Because it served to the glory of God, and it served it's the heritage of faith, and stuff. And so that was really encouraging to me, and really encouraging to me. I liked how you brought that up then, and at the end brought in, or towards the end, brought in, don't, die to your expectations and your hopes of having that church or wherever your expectations are, because I was just encouraged by that. So
Something, area for opportunity for growth from this sermon.
I really wish I would have come up here with a full manuscript rather than a bunch of notes.
Okay.
I feel that would have helped with flow.
What did you use? You just had.
I just had
An
a bunch
outline?
of scribbles and notes, and I had my outline, my main point,
Okay.
had the text. I had some things that I wanted to say in a certain way, but at the moment, because I tend to be linear, I think it would have helped to just have something I could just follow through in an orderly way rather than have notes.
Okay. Is this your first time trying it like this?
No, I just, I don't know.
All right.
I get nervous with the camera.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Trev.
I think to go off on that, if you're in talking with you yesterday, it sounds like it was also kind of a last minute one, and I wonder if it was written out, that logic would have kind of flowed a little bit better in some areas. There was one point where you said on point 3, we can trust Jesus because of his resurrection. And I was kind of wondering, like, how exactly does that work? And then off that, you kind of said, and we should be willing to die for him. And that is true. But I was kind of wondering, like how that works. And so I was just thinking to myself, well, maybe because like Jesus said, he promised, you guys, disciples, I will die, and in 3 days I'll rise again. And all the Old Testament promises, it was written that he would die. And so that is a good reason why we should trust him. But because it was left out, I wasn't exactly sure if that's where you're going, or maybe it had a different reason. So
Yeah, I didn't connect the dots for you as well as I could have.
Thanks.
I think this was already mentioned. I think like that your outline was a little bit muddy for me. So it wasn't clear to me when I moved from one point, remember Jesus, to suffering,
Right.
to dying. And so like I wasn't sure where we were at in that front.
Mm-hmm.
But like in addition to like the structure thing, I think you actually had like one imperative that you were like hitting pretty hard, which was like remember Jesus. And then like even when you like dipped into suffering, you said suffer remembering Jesus, and dying remember Jesus. And so maybe you might have been able to like clean up your outline by like having like just one imperative in your main point, and then like relating all those to that one imperative.
So that final part where the final verse, if we are faithless, he remains faithful. You did mention that it's both a warning and a promise. I felt you really nailed the warning part of it, and I wanted more promise, I guess. Just that's how it ends. It ends, he remains faithful. I mean, I was unfaithful, but yet the gospel promises me that
That's not what that text is doing, though. That text is all warning. He's faithful not to deny himself, so he will deny you. So I think he's right on there. Yeah, that's straight up warning.
But the faithfulness of Christ, that he remains faithful.
Yeah.
Even when we mess up.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, you can have a different take, but there's a very strong reading to say we might, it's because it's the reason why he will deny us is because he is faithful to himself. He can't deny himself. That's how the whole thing ends. He can't deny himself. So if we deny him, he denies us.
Yeah. So I think
that's his faithfulness expressed.
I think this brings a good point, though, from both of what you guys are saying, that I could have done a better job in clarifying that.
Yeah, if you're going to say promise, then you need to pay off on the promise, to Josh's point, if you're at least going to set that up.
Yeah, because I thought I mentioned that from like the first 2 lines of that hymn or poem or whatever it is. But I could have been clearer about making those connections as well, of how the faithfulness of Christ works for the promise and then also for that warning.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm with Josh on the critique, in that if you set it up that way, you got to pay off on it. And if you don't think it's that, then you can't set it up that way. I'm going to say, along with like what Theo said, the homiletical structure, you announced it early, but then like you didn't use it helpfully at all. Nor was it really clear how it was fitting in the text. Like I was like, I think we're in the third one, but you keep going back to the endure language. So yeah, the movements were really muddy, and that served to kind of hide the flow of the text as well.
Yeah. I was gonna say something similar. So I guess to build on that a little bit is that I never felt like to add to that, I guess I never felt that that I understood your excuse me. I never understood how you divide the text. And so I didn't know like if this was like 8 through 9, 10 through 11, and verse 12 or 12 through 13 or something like that. And so I think, again, that a little bit clearer and then sticking to that might helped a little bit.
Jeff, you know?
Ditto on what Brian just mentioned.
Okay.
I think maybe it would have helped us track with you better if you, in addition to like I think when you like move from like one point to the next, also like either read or reference what part of the scripture that point is tied to. So if you're like on Remember Jesus, either like read verse 1 or 2, or like, hey, let's look at verse 1 or 2 or something like that. And then that would like be like, this is the point, this is where I get it from the text. It makes your argument like, this is what I'm claiming, this is my evidence, kind of thing.
Josh, you know?
I don't know, it may be just me, but just maybe the pacing could be a little bit more energetic and faster.
Yes.
There was long pauses. So
Is that what you were alluding to, Victor, with the idea of not having a manuscript? Is that like where you felt it?
Yeah, it was just that. I don't know.
Yeah, that was tough. It was just like a sentence or two, pause, sentence or two, kind of same line. Like you never got to a rhythm. The one time you did was when you got to the personal story that Trevor mentioned. You didn't need your notes as much, and so your voice had a little affect to it. You had more of a like engagement with your material and the audience. But yeah, pacing was rough. I also want to say you seemed fuzzy on how you were using the word die. Like at some point, like you started by saying you're going to die sometime, and then like suffer. Like your argument was remember Jesus as you endure until you die. But then also at points you were like you need to die to your dreams. It's not, you're not trying to get the big church or the comfortable. What is this momentary life? So now you've switched to like this spiritual die to self, which is different from how you were using it. So you at least need to have like show what you mean or when you're making that switch and or why. Which one did you mean to? Which one did you think you were using throughout or intending?
Both,
Okay.
but I was thinking in like terms of suffering being a dying to yourself, but then you're also gonna really die.
Okay.
You know.
So that maybe that could have been like, yeah. Also like a challenging thing, and we've talked about this on the points. One word points are tough because every time you say that word, especially if it's like a text single word, we think, oh, he must be in this point. So like every time you were talking about like enduring, I thought, oh, like we must be back up in point 2. Or every time you talked about dying, I thought we're in point 3. So I just think, yeah, you can help yourself know where we are, one, by having a little more clear points and transitioning in and out of them. But 2, clarity on how you're using that word, where you are and when. Why will help bring some clarity also. Brian?
I don't have any more.
All right.
I'm taking all mine.
Since you presented this sheet, what was something you changed, or how were you helped by the group, and what's something you did well in the sermon?
Yeah, I changed a lot. Well, not a lot, but significantly, I would say my main point to my audience. And also, I think the structure was also different from my original worksheet. Looking at that little poem / hymn, whatever it was, more carefully was one way in which I was helped by the group.
Okay. Great. Something you did well?
Kept to my main point, I guess. Remember Jesus as you endure suffering until you die. I thought I kind of kept pointing back to that in some way. So.
Okay.
I liked your intro, Victor, and I just thought it kind of flowed well. Your pace was good. Your outline was clear, even though you didn't give the verse references. So yeah, I thought it was you came off with a good start there.
I think this already was mentioned, but I think your usage of your illustration at the end was like the right one to use, and it was really cool because it was like his last words to you, and then this is like Paul's last words to Timothy. So I thought that was super effective and like really brought like a good pathos to the whole message. I thought was really good.
At one point you had a really good question, like, do you believe in the resurrection? And then, well, that was repeated a few times, I think, from the beginning and then later. And, you said we're called to endure, and then that promise is that we're going to reign with him. And so that part stood apart for me, I guess. Yeah, really liked it.
You said something at least a few times that showed you had a really good handling of how the text was moving. And that you said something like, we need to endure by remembering Jesus Christ. At some point, it was at some time after, like, I think in your point 2, I don't know if you remember exactly when you said it, but it actually showed how the whole passage moves. Like, why is it that we remember Jesus risen from the dead? It's because that way we can suffer. And then the whole poem backs it up, right? Like, if we die with him, we will live with him. So that it showed. You could have even, I think, played that out a little bit more, like in your argument, not just remember Jesus as you endure, right? Your argument could have been like, remember Jesus risen from the dead so that you endure something, because that's what you did later in the sermon. So you could have made a little more hay off of that, but you had it in there. So
I thought I thought you while at times it might have been monotonous, I do think you carried an adequate tone, like the appropriate tone, I guess would be the right word, the appropriate tone into the text, because it is a very serious text. And one of my biggest pet peeves is like whenever someone's trying to make a joke in one of these kind of texts, and you didn't do that. I felt like you handled the text very sincerely. And I felt like all the points that you were making were supporting that and were handled with that appropriate seriousness. And you didn't have any like misplaced humor and things like that and all that kind of stuff. And like both your introduction and your gospel connection at the end, like both of them were like match the tone of the text, and I thought that was really good.
Yeah.
And I also appreciated how you said at the beginning, something like I chose this text for you guys or for the preachers, and we've been learning about this ethos thing, and I guess that appeal to character. And so it was a little bit convicting for me actually. I think I've been choosing text just based on like what's easiest for me. And so I appreciate that, and it kind of kept me in. It's like, okay, what's he gonna say now that he's chosen this for me? So.
I actually think like you're even though you did have like long pauses and have like variation, I actually think like your general like presence was really powerful, man. I don't know how to describe it. When you like walked up, read the text, introduced it, and started like going, like I felt like it was very authoritative. It felt like here's a pastor that's speaking, and like I think like it was just like the appropriate conduct and fitting. It's just very fitting, like the way you preach, and like I think it's you carried yourself like really well in the pulpit.
I think you did a good job of preaching to the audience that you have, and so just being aware of the moment of how this text speaks to us, and then also that's saying, well, you're called to die in this. That was really convicting for me. So
Me too.
You used questions well at different points, particularly in the final third. Things like, do you consider suffering? Something to that effect. And like, what is this momentary life? Do you believe? Right? Do you believe it? So at least those two at the end towards application, especially like instead of just saying like you need to suffer, it has a little bit more rhetorical effect. Do you consider suffering? To actually show us that like we don't even really think about it all that much. So it actually had a little bit more effect than even a command would, with the same implication. So yeah, that was well done.
One more thing about the introduction and the gospel connection is that I like that the first one was, and it's not that this was first or second or whatever, but that I like that one of them was like a quote. It was a theologian said this, but then the second one was a personal connection. It was a story. And so I don't know if you did this on purpose or not, but like sometimes preachers only tell stories about their family or like life events, things like that, and they never quote, whatever. And then you have the classic preacher that only ever quotes Spurgeon, Calvin, and never tells a personal story. Yeah. And I think to mix both of those in there helped balance everything really well. And so I like that a lot. Just the use of the differences of those two things. I think that will connect across the room. And I think that did connect across the room. I think it connected for everybody, but I think it connects in different ways and stuff. You're connected with the head and the heart with both those.